Welcome to VSB After the Bell. I'm your host, Gianna Chell. With deep gratitude and respect, we are honored to be learning and unlearning on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Hamathquiam, Skohomish Ohomeom, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The Vancouver School Board is among the most diverse school systems in Canada, with an annual enrollment of approximately 50,000 students from kindergarten to grade 12 and adult education students. Welcome back After the Bell listeners. Last episode, we began our conversation about universal design for learning with David Nix, VSB's District Principal of Inclusion for Secondary Schools, and Katie Novak, an education consultant, author, and a former Assistant Superintendent of Schools. Today, the conversation continues. In our first part of this discussion, we talked a lot about understanding what UDL is, how is it beneficial for students, and how it connects to the current BC curriculum. I want to shift our focus slightly and talk about delivering UDL successfully from a teaching perspective. What we've learned so far is that UDL requires delivering options to students so that everyone has their needs met as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching. So what does that mean? Does that mean to deliver UDL successfully, it depends on the teacher? Are they expected to deliver a bunch of mini programs so everyone's needs are met in the classroom? How does this work exactly? Let's jump right into our conversation with David and Katie.
When I went through teacher education, we were told plan for the middle and then make an adaptation for everybody who needs an adaptation. And it seemed like a good idea at the time because it seemed like you would sort of plan for the middle and you might have to make one or two adaptations. But the reality is that with the diverse classrooms that we have, even before we started including kids who were neurodiverse in the classrooms, it was like plan for the middle and make 15 adaptations. And it was overwhelming and it's too much for teachers. It's not doable, actually. And so this idea that we're creating all these little mini lessons for all of these different kids isn't actually what universal design asks us to do. What universal design says is instead of aiming for the middle and then creating all of these variations, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the whole varied group to begin with, and we're going to plan something that offers options for everybody in that group. So we're making one plan instead of 15 plans. It's just that one plan has options and variables built into it.
So instead of planning a bunch of different lessons for each student, the purpose of UDL is to create one plan with options and choices that students can choose based on their needs. Right, because making a dozen or more lesson plans can sound daunting and a lot of work for any educator. So UDL aims to create one inclusive plan with options and choices for students based on their needs. Sounds like a logical approach, but how does one deliver this type of instruction and deliver it well?
I mean, I would say that it's not dependent on the teacher. I think it's dependent on the quality of professional development provided to teachers. I really think that's a systems work. That is why districts invest in professional learning of staff. And, for parents listening, it's something that is much more of a marathon than a sprint, but knowing that we are moving in this direction is just recognizing that teachers will have that support to move forward and that kids are capable of helping to co-create this. And so it's not so much the skill set of the teacher necessarily, but the willingness to say, is there another way that we could do this together?
So are we there yet with implementing UDL?
Implementation science tells us that it takes about 4 to 7 years to make truly adaptive change in a large organization. But that doesn't mean that small changes can't happen every single day. I don't want people pointing fingers at teachers saying, oh, they're doing it already and they're not doing it yet. It's asking the system saying, what kind of professional development are teachers getting so that they know how to do it differently? What opportunities do teachers have to see examples of true excellence in their colleagues? Because goodness gracious, there are some brilliant people doing brilliant work behind closed doors where no one can see them. And so I think that as much as we want to build an inclusive community of kids, it's really hard to be inclusive of kids if we're not inclusive of the adults who serve them.
Interesting. Let's take a global look at UDL. Katie, as an international education consultant, is this teaching philosophy implemented worldwide?
I would say yes, 100%. The United Nations did make a stand and talked about the value of universally designed educations. And I would say that equally worldwide, I work with IB schools, I work with independent schools, I work with public schools, I work with private schools, I work with alternative schools, I work with kind of judicial court schools. I think that, there's a recognition that we are not robots. We do not all need the same thing. And certainly maybe the scope of flexibility is larger in some places, but I think that we've come to terms with one size fits all, assembly line, factory model of education is not effective for the future of our world. And that if we want to be able to leverage the technology we have to nourish really the human side of education, which is this self-awareness, this responsible decision making, this relationship building, which some people call these things social and emotional, but like all learning is social and emotional. Like in order to achieve academically now, you do need to be self-aware. You do need to make these responsible decisions. And so I am a strong supporter of public education. I think that it was an absolutely amazing move to take education, which was something that was so exclusionary towards the privileged, and say this is available to everyone. And, I believe in the heart of public education that we truly can serve all people well. I think the power of education, the power of students, the power of teachers absolutely can work anywhere, as long as we just show teachers that there's a way, that we support them in being flexible, and that we really help the entire community to know that it will be different.
What are we doing as a district to make sure that our teachers are reaching that level of excellence?
So, sort of multiple things are happening at once. Certainly people in the last, I'm going to say decade, who have come out of teacher education programs have come out with exposure to universal design for learning and to inclusive programming. And it doesn't mean that there was none before that, but it's now a pretty integral part, I would say, certainly of most of the teacher education programs that feed into the Vancouver School Board. At the same time, we have school-based professional development happening in many places around Vancouver, where there are opportunities for teachers who are wanting assistance in developing their skills in this area to have some opportunity to do that. We have some support teachers at the district level who are able to go out and actually spend time with teachers who find themselves in really challenging situations. But I think really the key to making this happen, and this is really my feeling around professional development too, is allowing opportunities for mentorship and for teachers to share with teachers. So we're really focusing on, certainly within schools, connecting teachers with people who are already doing this, because there are people doing this everywhere already. And also then across the district and at secondary, particularly within departmental groups, because this looks different in math than it does in English or social studies. And so in certain subjects, it's more straightforward to understand how you might apply this, and more challenging in other subjects, which may have been taught in a very traditional way for a very, very long time. And so we're always looking for opportunities to connect in that way. And I would say also just to start really creating a more of a collaborative mentorship model within the Vancouver School Board for teachers, where teachers feel comfortable working with each other.
That's what we want teachers to understand. And again, they can only learn that from each other, because I could come in and say, well, here's something that worked for me, but like not in your school with your kids. Whereas when the person down the hall is like, oh, this is a strategy, the students love it, this is how I do it, everyone's like, okay, cool, I have a prep period tomorrow, third period, can I come watch it? And that's where the real magic is.
The amount of information we have access to has changed. It also means the way we learn has changed. And so the way we teach needs to change too.
You have certain people who sort of uphold this idea of, oh, education is falling apart and we don't have this anymore and we don't have this anymore and they see themselves as sort of the keeper of education. But to my mind, the education that they're keeping is education from like the 1950s. When they argue that way. And what I really want to see is us moving towards an understanding that the world is so different. It is changing so rapidly. We don't even know what the world we're training our kids for is going to look like. If you think about like the last 20 years and the things that have changed and happened in 20 years, and it just keeps getting faster and faster. We have no idea the world we're educating kids for. And so if we're not educating people who can continue to educate themselves and who can be open and become lifelong learners and who can be flexible and take some ownership of their own learning, then we're not doing them a service.
Katie, as a consultant, how can school districts help support educators to move away from the historic ways of education that David mentioned and successfully move into practicing UDL?
When I talk to districts, the four most important things for me for school improvement are always, number one is going to be really effective inclusive practices. So strong pedagogy paired with high quality instructional materials, data practices, so constantly just trying to collect evidence for how kids are doing to be responsive to their needs, and then tiered supports, the recognition that regardless of how brilliantly we can universally design a classroom, there will be some kids who will need more than that. Whether it's gifted students, whether it's students who have significant intellectual support needs, whether it's significant behavioral support needs, is that, there has to be some additional supports or some additional enrichment opportunities for some students for them to get what they need to be successful. But, UDL really falls beautifully into that, like really evidence-based inclusive practice. It sounds like there are amazing high quality instructional materials. And the next thing is, how do we use data to determine which students are going to need more than what a best first education can provide them with?
As we know, supporting student success doesn't just stop in the classroom. It needs to happen at home too. What can families do to help support a positive UDL environment for their child?
Connect back to their teachers and their principals and say, how can we help to make this a reality? Because everybody wants to be successful. I promise you, every student is successful when they can be. Every teacher is successful when they can be. Every leader is successful when they can be. And working together towards this shared vision of we can all be successful, but we can't take the same road to get there. And where we end up is not going to look exactly the same either, but we can all work toward the same goals and reach our greatest potential in a way that makes us feel like we belong, that makes us feel supported, and that makes us feel challenged. So ultimately, adults aren't making decisions that are preventing students from choosing pathways that would bring them like great joy and success in this crazy, beautiful life that we're living.
David and Katie, thank you so much for this insightful discussion. As a parent myself, I've learned that UDL is a modern way of learning that teaches students how to become more independent, lifelong learners. It helps them become more prepared for their academic, social, and work lives and sets them up for long-term success. Thank you for sharing your insights and experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. That was great.
Follow us on Instagram at VSB39 to make sure you don't miss when the next episode drops. Or subscribe to VSB After the Bell on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Special thanks to music teacher Mr. Bonnell and the Nightingale Elementary students for the original theme song.